Good morning, Morning Musings by Melinda. Happy Tuesday, the 2nd of February, and today we're going to talk with a question from Patricia Clutter Smith, who said, so many of us have lost loved ones, ways to cope, and how to positively move forward, which I find to be a very difficult subject to talk about because everybody grieves differently. And there's different types of grief with different types of death. So if you've lost somebody to suicide, for example, there's a lot of other kinds of energy that goes with that for the individual that's left behind. A murder leaves something that is different than other deaths. A long-term illness is something that is a situation where you might actually feel like you are relieved when that person finally leaves the planet, not because you want them to go, but because you want them to stop suffering. Or Alzheimer's or dementia, where the person doesn't know that they're suffering, but you know that they would be mortified to have to exist that way if it's an elongated process, and they have lost every ability to speak, to eat, etc. So, different types of death create a different type of feeling with loss. Somebody that's had an accident, somebody that's had a drug addiction, or a sudden death like a heart attack. Each one of these kinds of losses brings with it a different set of feelings and processes. And I would never in a million years tell you that I know the answers to any of it, because we just don't. We just don't know how we're going to react or respond to the loss of a loved one. Some people create a very spiritual connection when they lose a loved one, because that's the resource that they access in order to move forward. Some people remain victims forever. I did look at some things that I'd like to share with you, but I want you to understand that it's your own individual process, and truly, men process loss much differently than women. So let's talk about, some things that as I was doing my homework that I looked at for you today. Number one, realize that everyone deals with death differently. Again, men deal with loss much differently than women. Some people don't know how to process their emotions at all. They haven't been taught how to do that as children, so they don't have the tools to be able to cope. And they may, go on a drinking binge or something that is an ineffective way of dealing with loss. The real effective way to deal with any kind of loss is to open up and talk about it, but only when you're ready. You might not be ready right away. And by the way, you can't imagine as a medium how many stories I've heard of people kind of abandoning other people as they've suffered such a loss because they don't know what to say. And the truth is, all you need to say is, I am sorry for your loss, or I am here for you. If you're ready to talk anytime, day or night, call me. All they need is somebody to give them some kind of positive energy or some kind of a connection. They don't need you to look the other way, to make a meal, send it to the house, and then never connect again. Okay? So, don't stop connecting with your friends if they've had a loss. Make sure that you continue to make that connection, okay? Right now, we're dealing with a lot of folks who have had a lot of loss. We've had people that have had entire families wiped out by COVID. Make sure that you're letting them open up and talk about it. And then don't compare. Like, you should never say to somebody who lost their child, when my mother died or when my father died. It's a whole different kind of grief. You're not supposed to outlive your children. You're supposed to outlive your parents. I know that you want to kind of create a relatability factor. That makes common sense, but make sure that you're not doing it in such a manner that is kind of insulting. Make sure that you just say to the person, I can't imagine how you feel, really, because that's the truth, unless you too have lost a child. Number 3, let yourself be vulnerable. Cry. It's okay to cry. A lot of people think they have to be so strong for the family, especially men. They feel like they have to be so strong that they're not allowed to cry. And you know what? that bottled up energy creates other kinds of problems for people, including physical ones. Allow your friends to be there for you. Know that you are allowed to feel screwed up for a little while after you've had that kind of loss. You don't have to be Hercules. You don't have to be so strong. You don't have to be in a situation where you're showing the world how strong you are, because, sometimes the fallout of that happens later on. Okay, process it, okay? Make sure that you are still talking about this person. Don't I know people who never talk about the loss of their brother or their sister or their loved one again. They're just not allowed to talk about it in the family because the family can't process it all together. And then they end up coming to me for medium work, and the person on the other side says they are so sorry for the family kind of pushing that under the rug and not being able to make that connection. Make sure that you still do what you love. Make sure that you still find happiness and joy. Your loved one on the other side wants you to be happy. They're happy. No one's ever told me it sucks over there. So whatever has ailed them, whether it be drug addiction or dysfunction or cancer or whatever has taken them across, is healed when they get to the other side. They don't expect you to then take on the burden of whatever their issue was and pick up that burden and torture yourself for the rest of your life. They want you to move forward in joy too. That's why they always send signs and signals, and give yourself time. So some other ways to cope when a loved one dies is to make sure that when you have some kind of a ritual. Again, I'm not, excuse me for a second, I'm not comparing my loss to anybody else's, but I will say that I do have in my family hallway one of those hall trees, and I have something of my mother's, actually a funny story between her and I about a Raggedy Ann that I gave her when she got dementia, my father's cowboy hat and cane. That's been moved with me because, my father's been gone since I was in my 30s in many houses. So I have this little special ritual place that is my family generational connection. Some people keep ashes. Some people have brought me ashes actually and sat them on my desk and said, this is my mother or my father or whatever. Whatever ritual is for you that makes you feel a connection. You can still talk to your loved one on the other side. You can write them. They do hear you. It's always surprising to people when they're talking to a medium, because I'll say, who's Joe Schmo? And they'll say, well, that person is alive, and my father never knew that person. Well, if your father is watching you from heaven and Joe Schmo is important to you, then of course he's going to mention it so that you know that he still has a continuous connection with you, whether he's here or there. That's very important. Please don't medium shop. That is something that is not a healthy coping mechanism. I think it's great to visit a medium that gives you that kind of information and connection so that you know that your loved one is safe and sound. I even think it's fine to use that energy as part of your grieving process and then move on from it. And I even think it's fine if you talk to a medium once a year on their heavenly birthday or whatever, just to make sure that person is still connecting with you. But don't medium shop and hop from one person to the other. It's not healthy for you. So anyway, I really don't have the answers. I hope some of these things have hit you in a positive way, because there's really no answer as to how we process the loss and move forward. It's really just one of those one foot in front of the others, one day at a time kind of things, and to honor yourself in the process. That's the bottom line. Anyways, happy Tuesday to you. I hope that you have a wonderful day, and I will see you tomorrow.